TV viewers, it's Carrie Clarke again for another episode of The Healing Power of Divorce. This month's topic is all about healing so you don't make the same mistakes again. And I'm very grateful to have one of my friends that I have been friends with for, I won't say how many years, a very long time. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Britt, and Carrie's right. We have been friends for a very long time.
Now, this topic, we scheduled this about roughly, we came up with the topic probably a week and a half ago. And before the camera started, I was talking to Liz about how I just really, when I was playing this topic out in my mind, I was really getting a lot of anxiousness. And I had talked to a few of my friends about this topic, and they all say the same thing to me. Well, how do you not make the same mistakes? And I reflect back on my 20-year marriage with my ex-husband, and I say 20 years is a success, but I also say there was a lot of things that I did that if I could go back and do them again, I would definitely change them. Now, Liz, you knew me way back.
I did, yes.
In the day when I actually started my relationship.
Yes. And I was in my own very tumultuous relationship at that point as well, that did not lead to marriage. It actually ended up ending, but that was actually, because of the end of that relationship, that was actually how I met my ex-husband. So, you know, life brings us places and we're like, what's going on? And I think looking back, we'll start to be able to put all the pieces together.
Yes. And that's really what I was reflecting on, thinking about. You know, I was driving in my car and I was saying to myself, especially with you, I say, if you go back to your 20-year-old self, and you really look at your 20-year-old self, and you look at yourself after a 20-year relationship with someone, you are such a different person.
Yes.
You know, my 20-year-old self had no experience, had no clue of red flags, had no idea, you know, when someone said to me, I don't think this is healthy, you know, I couldn't run away from it quick enough.
Right.
You know, I had no idea that many of my childhood patterns had really come into you know, my adult life and my adult relationships. And you know, I'm sure you can attest for your first marriage that of a lot of the things that you learned as a child that were dysfunctional,
I brought them into that first marriage. Yeah. I absolutely brought them into that first marriage. My parents got divorced when I was 12. They separated, and that had a significant impact on my life because I ended up losing touch with my father. So I went through all these teen years, and I was with a mom who was working 2 jobs to support my sister and I didn't have a healthy male role model in my life. So there was a lot of that time where I did not know what a healthy relationship between a male and a female looked like. Okay? So I get into my early 20s, and I was actually a stepmom to a 3-year-old girl when I was 23. Like, I was 23 years old, just out of college, just trying to figure my life out. And here I am in this scenario where I'm, you know, trying to help raise this little girl. And, you know, but Carrie's exactly right. I brought my experience of my parents and what I experienced growing up in my own, you know, relationships romantic relationships before I got married, and I brought that into the marriage. That's a lot of baggage. That's a lot of baggage. It's a lot of baggage for one person, and it's even double the baggage for the partner, especially if they've come into the relationship with their baggage. And when I met my ex-husband, he was already divorced. So he had already been through one marriage. So here we are, he's divorced and we're together. And then I was, like I said, I was young. I was 22, I think, when he and I met. So I had no idea. I had no idea how to have a healthy relationship. I just knew that, that was the thing that society wants us to do. We were supposed to meet somebody. We're supposed to get married. We're supposed to have a family and everything's great. No, it's not. It's not always great,
Yeah.
And no matter how hard I felt like, no matter how hard I tried or I wanted it to be, it just didn't work for us.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for us.
Well, I think, what happens is when you're young, you're so naive and you're so, exactly what you said, wrapped in this idea of getting married and having this perfect life. And what ultimately happens is, most of us do get married, but we don't expect all the, the hardships to happen. You look back and you say you always wanted to be happy with no struggles.
That's
and
right.
The reality of,
Yep.
A marriage, especially a long-term marriage, is you have a significant amount of ups and downs. And
Yes.
the ups and downs are just, it's really how you deal with them. And I had told you before the camera started, I went online and I typed in this question and it brought up, the top 9 questions that you ask yourself when you're in a relationship. And the first one is, that your partner is your equal. I don't know about you. Once you get past that initial, most people say it's like a 6-month period of bliss. Once you get past that and then you start seeing your differences and the things that are good, I found I always was feeling like the mother. I was feeling like, I was always in charge of everything and very, as a woman, we're naturally nurturing. And I think it just, in a relationship, it comes in and it's welcomed usually. But I found that I began to feel very resentful of holding this role.
Yes.
It was a role that at first, initially I felt like it was a lot of love. And then as time progressed, it became, a responsibility that I just didn't want.
Right.
And when you're very young, there's a tremendous amount of immaturities and you're naive and, these things that are feeling like your responsibilities in the marriage of dividing.
Right.
Responsibilities now have become, they're just an enormous burden on your shoulders.
Yes.
That you just feel like, how did I get myself,
Right.
Signed up for this?
That's right. And I think that's when we get into these partnerships, marriage, we're thinking, the best of our partner, the best of ourselves, and that we can work through anything because that's, what we want. It's not like we get married and we're like, oh yeah, and then if things don't work out, I'll just get a divorce. That's fine. That's nonsense. I got married to my ex-husband because I thought at the time he was the best person for me to be with. And I didn't want to be by myself. I wanted to be with him. And, it's hindsight is always 20/20, as they say, but, what you know at the time. And when you know better, you do better. And if you don't know better, you're just going to do what, with the knowledge that you have. And I was joking with somebody just the other day. I said, you know, people joke about having a handbook of life and how, you know, I never got my handbook of life. I got like a 2-page pamphlet with like a couple of pictures on it and here you go. And that's kind of how I feel like. I never got the handbook. Like, where's this handbook? I never got it.
Yes,
so you figure it out as you go, you know, and you know, I do not regret my marriage. And I don't regret my marriage because today I can look back and say, there are things that I brought to that marriage that I could have done better. But at the time, I was doing the best that I could. I came to that marriage with the wounds of having, you know, my parents divorced and not having a father figure in my life. And I got 2 of the greatest, beautiful boys that I could not even imagine are so wonderful in my life. And if I had to go and do it over again just to get the same experience and knowledge that I have now, I would absolutely do it. I would absolutely do it.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And I say that like 100% because one of the things that comes out of divorce is that you value relationships more.
Yes.
And the people that have stood by you for a long time, you definitely, from the beginning, you appreciate that more. And I too can look back on my 20 years with my ex-husband and say, I don't regret it. I learned I had to be put in a situation where I had extreme highs and lows. It was never an even keel kind of relationship. It was always like when it was really good, it was really great. But when it was really low, it was really terrible.
Absolutely.
And that is just, I do things, you know, I go big.
Yeah, I know.
So that, you know, for me at the time, like you said, you know, I needed it for that moment. Mm-hmm. And my childhood too, you know, from my childhood, I had really severe abandonment issues. Mm-hmm. And those abandonment issues ultimately came into my marriage. Mm-hmm. And I look back and, you know, I can explain my marriage and talk about it and everything. And people say, why, you know, why would you interact that way? The interaction that I had was because, you know, you find a partner that has mirror image issues as you do. And that's how you, you know.
So can we talk about that a little bit? I know this is completely a little bit off the question, but that is a concept that has intrigued me from the very beginning. And I didn't get it at first. I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, no, they're mean to me. And, you know, that's not a mirror image of me. So can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, I can, you know, through my own healing and my own of the relationships that I'm attracting now.
Yes. From
where I used to be.
Yes.
What I find is that I'm no longer searching for someone to save me. I'm no longer searching for someone to be, you know, confirmation I'm wanted on a constant basis.
Yep.
And I've had to go through a lot of soul searching on my part, you know, to come to a point where I'm not searching for a partner, you know, that gives that back to me. I'm only searching for love for myself.
Yes. And that's where the equality of the partnership comes in. Because if you're depending on your partner to meet that deficit that you have going on inside of you, it's too much. It's too much for them. It's too much for us. It's a disaster. It really honestly is. There's no way.
Yes. Yes. And I found myself, you know, early on in my marriage, just really, you know, saying, to myself, I'm looking at this person I feel is broken, and this person needs love. And what I failed to put in the equation was I was broken.
Yes.
I needed a tremendous amount of
Yes.
love.
Yes.
And I just was not, I'm Superwoman. Here I go. I'm here to save the day.
Right.
And I somehow got this high from that feeling, and I stayed in it for a very long time. I could not put down that Superwoman cape. I couldn't take it off. And I reflect back on it and say, a lot of the things that I really wanted to do, I didn't do.
Yeah.
That were focused on myself, because I had a hard time keeping my head above water.
Would you say it was like an addiction?
Yeah.
Because addiction can come in all different forms.
Yes.
And it's not just alcohol and drugs, but relationships, love.
Yes.
That for me, I think, was one of my.
Well,
yeah.
I said that early on when I filed for divorce. I said that. I said that in a group setting. I said, I feel like my ex-husband's my kryptonite.
Yes.
It's just like I have to get away from this kryptonite and just like find myself. And I can't tell you how many times I've played that over in my head, and I've cried about it, and I've struggled, and really reflected on all the things that I did along the way, and how I lost myself.
Absolutely.
I lost my soul. I lost, who I am. Where's Carrie?
Right. Right.
I don't know where Carrie is.
Right.
She's checked out of the building. And what was funny about it was other people noticed Carrie had left the building, for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I said, it was survival mode, and I just could not bring it back to like I had lost myself.
Yeah.
And so it's really, this topic is so...
It's deep. We could go on for hours and hours and continually dive deeper and deeper and get more and more into it.
Oh my gosh,
it's so layered. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yes.
It really is.
Yes. It definitely is. And I say, one of the biggest turning points for me was I had done a fitness competition. And I know you know about it.
Yeah.
And, I never in a million years thought that I would ever do a fitness competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I told my ex-husband that, I was going to do this. At that time, he had told me, it's not like you're going to win. And, I reflect back on that, and there's been moments where I've struggled with, feeling angry about that.
Yep.
And I realized that somewhere along the way, I had done some healing, because those abandonment issues, I had let those go when I stepped on that stage.
Yep.
I didn't ask him for approval. I didn't, talk about it. I just came home. I said, I'm going to do this.
Yep.
And I had done enough work, on myself at that point where I just didn't care anymore. I was going to do it just for me.
Just for you. Right.
And just to work through my own, things that I was dwelling on.
Right. This was you, separate from your marriage, separate from whatever relationship you were having here. This was a completely separate form of...
And it was me detaching from that.
Yes.
Those wounds that... And subconsciously, I didn't even know it. because I did it in October of 2014, and by December 31st of 2015, I had filed for divorce.
Yep.
It was enough of, me taking my power
Yes.
to just realize that I was changing into a different person.
Yes.
And I really, well, like you said, we can go on and on about this topic. It's never ending. I thank you so much for having the courage to come on with me.
Thank you for asking me. This was like fantastic.
I so appreciate it. And we have been friends we started working
Do we
together.
really want to age ourselves?
No, we don't. But people can figure it out.
Yeah. I'll tell you what car I drove way back then.
That's great. Thanks, PEG TV viewers, for watching another episode of The Healing Power of Divorce. We're going to pan to a short video that focuses on the fitness competition that I just mentioned. Look out for next month's episode. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
As far back as I can remember, I've been an athlete and I have loved to exercise. When I entered my teen years, I was very self-conscious of my body. Like every other woman in the world, I had a hard time accepting the image that reflected back in the mirror. This self-consciousness became worse as I entered my adult years. I had a hard time putting on a bathing suit or wearing clothes that actually were my size. As the years went by, I had several changes and challenges that made me look at life differently. I had spent a lot of my life focusing and encouraging other people instead of the girl reflecting back in the mirror. In July of 2014, I was offered the opportunity to train for a fitness competition. This was never anything I aspired or imagined myself doing. I signed up without a lot of thought. I heard many people talk about doing things like this, but the fear of failure made them not take any action. Many people say if I was younger, if I had more money, if I had this, if I had that, I would have done it. I don't ever want to be that person that looks back on my life with regrets. So on October 25th, 2014, I arrived at the Granite State Open Fitness Competition and I entered the bikini division. Every amount of vulnerability that I could tolerate was at stake. I entered the locker room and my competitors were 20 years younger than me. I looked in the mirror and said, "Have you completely lost your mind?" Nope, this girl that had trouble accepting herself was going to prove that she was worthy of standing on the stage. My trainer said, "Fake it till you make it." Luckily for me, I no longer had to convince that little girl I saw in my head that I loved myself. I walked on the stage with absolutely no fear. I was comfortable in my own skin. Finally, the only competitor I saw on the stage was me. I had to let go of the internal battle and love myself. It wasn't about winning. It was about embracing vulnerability and not being afraid people would reject me for being Carrie. I am very grateful to say I not only embraced myself, but so did the judges. I am the 2014 Granite State Open Bikini Novice first and overall winner. I can still look back at the pictures and say, "You go, girl, you did it."